Hello all. Thank you for an overwhelming response for the first webinar. And this is Rupali Gupte, Principal of Srimati K.L. Tiwari College of Architecture, an educational institute under Rahul Group of Schools and Colleges, welcoming you again for our second webinar, which is Rubaru with architect Nisha Nair Gupta. Nisha is the principal architect at Design Variable. She has a varied experience as architect, journalist, and an active participant in public art initiatives. She has a wonderful project called People Place Project, and it is her initiative to connect the city through narratives, through experiences of people living in the city. Nisha has done a wonderful job in her publications where you see or you understand the city with this lens. We welcome you, Nisha, on this platform of Rubaru, and are really eager to hear your thoughts and delve in the topic of loss of publicness. So we shouldn't wait longer. We proceed for your session. Thank you once again, everyone.
Um, Hello everybody. I hope you are all safe, healthy, taking care of yourselves. I would like to begin today's talk by first thanking Rupali Gupte ma'am and SKL Tiwari College of Architecture for giving me this opportunity. Um, my topic or my talk, a loss of publicness, actually is stemming from this quarantine or lockdown reality that we are all occupying. Actually, recently I had overshot a deadline and a writing deadline, and I decided to call a friend of mine for some pep talk and for inspiration. So it turned out that he himself was in need of some stimuli, and he tells me that I really missing traveling in the train, Nisha, and watching people, overhearing conversations, peeping onto their screens, checking out what books they were reading, observing their clothing, their frown lines, body language, imagining what their stories will be like. And now, in this quarantine period, in a joint family setup with a little toddler at home, he says he barely feels or finds the time to write. Then there is his wife, who is a corporate office goer, and she has some very demanding deadlines, and so they try to fix routines and stick to it. She is also constantly juggling between the guilt of having to forego a lot of household responsibilities, which many of us are trying to fulfill at the moment, uh, onto the only other female family member in the house, that is her mother-in-law, and also the other guilt of not being able to spend enough time with a toddler who's now at home all the time because the daycares are shut. Uh, and he also tells me about how the otherwise the 3 BHK which they are all occupying as a joint family would have been peacefully empty during the course of a day, which provided a good breathing time for his mother, who is right now in loss of like a place and time, and most of her daily activities and routines are now centered around the kitchen and housekeeping, and it is probably only the occasional telephone chats that she has with her friends and relatives that help her keep her sanity. And of course, like, there are bouts of anger and frustration which are the new normal. He laughs. So, and again, he reiterates, I really miss traveling in the local trains. So this one particular sentence which he said about local trains compelled me to compelled me or pushed me to think about like what kind of publicnesses do we actually occupy, or what do they actually mean to us, or what do they feel to us. I'm not sure if publicness is a word, but I would like to use that word today because of its adjective quality, and because we will be exploring the meaning making or the narrative that is imbibed in the public spaces that we occupy. So now I plunge on to like what is today's talk going to be about. So it's going to explore two main aspects. What is the meaning, or what is this intimacy of publicness to all of us? What are the experiences that we are all what are the experiences that we feel? Why is this collection of experiences a collective or a community phenomena? What is this urge to belong in all of us? So when like in this urge to belong, what are the stories that belong in this public space for all of us? That is the first aspect that I would like to explore. And the second aspect that I would like to explore is about placemaking, and how the tools of placemaking can evolve to aid perhaps the new narrative of publicness that is emerging in our times now. Um, I would first like to begin with exploring the word intimacy of publicness. Um, let's take the case of one of the most important experiences of our everyday routine in cities like Bombay, the train travel. How do you experience intimacy in this little time of commute? Sometimes not little, but like large periods of time. Like how do you like one of the things that very clearly come to mind other is the physical intimacy that you experience. The Yeah, like you're squashed against each other, you're touching so many surfaces that others have touched before you. In rush hours, you're breathing down each other's face. Like I wonder if we'll be able to do that with the abandon now anymore. But you know, we are all a part of this large mass that is moving towards a certain goal, a certain destination, which is going to reach there and do something. And or you know, they have all done their work and now they have packed their bags and we are all moving back to the home. So here I would like to pause and reflect on what does this moment or this time of travel mean to all of us. What are the meanings that are generated in this period? um, like you know in like and meanings which are talking about intimacy in that sense. Like how does that intimacy, um which is not just a mere physical intimacy, but it is also a part of a collective consciousness in that sense. So like first to begin with is the routine that the train sets for us, and a routine which is actually an industrial routine, you know, which was set up for us like over like probably 150 years ago when industrialization takes over the world, where leaving home at a specific time to travel to go to a destination of work, and in the city typically where you live and where you work are completely different, different quarters in that sense. You arrive at a particular time, you leave at a specific time, um, and in the train you are all together as a part of this narrative, a narrative of an industrial narrative of working. And so in that sense, in the space of the train, you're like bound together by the commonality of being a part of the plug of a society, or you know, being a functioning plug in the society. So this, perhaps I wonder if this is the, and this kind of a feeling, this kind of an knowledge or intimacy gives us a sense of validation. So is this perhaps the publicness that we are missing? You know, about our role, about our function, our collective function, where meeting so many people who are like us, is that a story of a routine? Is that what is missing? Um, so I also feel that sometimes So there is an extension. The extension to the story is that we're all part of a system or a machine that needs to function in a well-oiled manner. We are trained, actually, we are trained from infancy to respond to alarm clocks, to report on time, be competitive, climb ladders, and particularly be productive. And hence, in the space of a train, we are all bound by the single mission of productivity. Either you're going to school or you're going to an office, or all of which are systemic things like an assembly line. Now, what happens when this routine or system suddenly gets disrupted by the pandemic? So, first of all, this disruption was very was unimaginable. The system stops or is like slows down, and now we are compelled to alter it, and we are being told that the mechanisms are being restored, but we can't sort of sense it. There is an absence of the feeling of this kind of redirection or restoration that is somehow very confusing to us. We are we are somehow alone in within the space of our body, ironically in an intimate space of a home, but we can't comprehend this sense of redirection or redirection fully. So our roles, our functions, which got an assertion every day by probably the mere act of traveling, is now suddenly diminished, missing in an otherwise intimate space of our home. So, in the industrial world, home and work are two distinct functions, like I said before, um, and occupy two different spaces. So, in that sense, work is something which is often also valued more than the home, and because it is actually looked at as a space of production, of action. In the workspace, everyone is on a mission, solving problems, like generating, producing, furthering the wheel of the world, or running the motors of the world. So be it an office boy or a CEO, all have their roles to play in that sense. And us as architects also design or plan to make this system more efficient, more productive. In this context, the home becomes a space of rest, shelter. Thus, that dictates the design language of a home. A bedroom occupies a large bed. Like, we don't imagine a room of an individual other than a bedroom often. Um, then, so be it like a large sprawling bungalow with many servants, services, and rooms, etc., or the stacked up apartments which are near transport hubs and railway stations, etc., or even shanties or slums with bunk beds and huddled kitchens and common bathrooms. Home becomes a space to return to and relax, and ironically, to be never fully occupied across the day. Here I would like just make a small digression and point out how this industrial narrative that we are talking about um, also managed to create a primary division of labor, which is that is probably the core division of labor, or the first division of labor that happens in an industrial society. The professional labor or and the household labor, and often the more valued professional labor and undervalued household labor. And I say this right now because most of us are working from home and at home, where we are sort of confused by the meddling of the two. So in his book, The Third Wave, Alvin Toffler extensively talks about how industrial societies wedged great divides in gender role and created subsequent imbalance, which is not seen often in pre-industrial societies. To give you an example, take the case of fishing communities, the coolies, where both the genders are equally invested in the community occupation. However, if you take the case of a quintessential industrial man, uh, in that narrative, though, so the man goes to work while the women handles the household. So that is the kind of division I'm talking about. And if we take the case of working women, a lot of questions about household. efficiency or the management of the house, etc., gets outsourced to house help, maids, etc., etc. So yeah, so this digression was to sort of point out this kind of meddling that is happening in the space of this industrial narrative at the moment for us. And so yeah, coming back to the train or an equivalent public transport, where we began this thread of conversation, which is sort of to illustrate uh, the intimacy of publicness narrative. Um, coming back to the narrative of the train, where we began this thread of conversation. Um, so, in a way, like, you know, there is a certain celebration and applause also that we experience uh, in the space of a train, and while we are traveling from our co-passengers or people who are just like us. In fact, we are all acquainted with these phrases like "kitna jaldi aata hai," "kitna late jata hai." Then, you know, there is this very in a way very proud fatigue on the faces of late night travelers, and, like, you know, it's like kitna kaam karta hai. So there is this kind of very unsaid acknowledgement that passes around in that space. Sometimes it's as simple as a quick apology when, you know, somebody rushes into someone, and, you know, this understanding nod that, oh, I know, you know, I know that you are in a hurry. Then a brief smile or exchange when you're passing somebody's luggage and keeping it on the top. Um, you offer seats to other people, and there these small talks, and also to just scale this up a little, there are these friendships that are formed over the space of transit and commute. uh, so, in a way, these unregistered exchanges, appraisals, etc., all come together to form the narrative of publicness uh, that we experience as being a part of this moment. And also, somehow, these unsaid, unconscious, though it's unsaid and unconscious, they're all validations of our validations to us to belong and to be a part of this functioning system. And also, we have to like sort of acknowledge the fact that traveling is a fluxy space. It is a in between space in that sense. Like most of the public spaces are, the chances of not meeting somebody again are really large in that sense. So when a validation or an acknowledgement comes from this space, it's sort of very innocent, or it's very a credential, I don't know, but or unbiased or unfiltered, actually that would be more appropriate to say, since it is anonymous. And there is a certain romance to this idea, that the idea of a stranger empathizing with you, admiring you, and somehow these are all which are a part of this routine or this publicness narrative that I'm talking about. And, like, cut to present, like confined within the spaces of our home, these discounted experiences, which actually initially also never entered our registry, are completely absent, and now surrounded by this whole surplus of domesticity and conflicted quantities of labor, one misses being a part of this, like one misses being the quintessential industrial man. Even though we are setting new routines, and even if we say that introverts have, like, found their peace, the anonymous display or the exhibitionism of oneself, like to and back from work, is absent, and that is a very unsettling feeling. And, you know, if it was not to sort of if not to exhibit, then, you know, to watch that kind of experience of to and fro, that narrative is completely off. So perhaps this is one of the losses of publicnesses that we are experiencing. Similarly, let's take the case of other narratives or publicness that exists around us. Let's talk about some other routines. So many of those who are not part of this industrial or factory system. So women who visit markets in the afternoon to organize their household supplies, and how over time they become like favorite customers and have favorite shopkeepers. Senior citizens whose part of the routine is to visit shrines, meet friends, chat with them, feed kabutars, small things like that. Then, or during the course of an evening or a morning walk, a quick hello or a goodbye to those who you see at the park every day. uh, so these are like individual narratives of our public experiences that are missing from our life at the moment. And perhaps even after the lockdown lifts, I don't know if we'll be able to resume um, these these experiences with the same intimacy that existed prior. And of course, because like, this is largely because the pandemic has sort of planted us like a feeling or the seed of suspicion of our own encounters. We are like suspicious of breaching our physical boundaries. Um, and on that note, I would just like to like dwell on this aspect. And so we are right now like seeing so many images of people leaving cities, and especially it's heart wrenching to see so many migrants and the conditions in which they are, and they are leaving the city. And these are very key urban policy kind of concerns. Uh, and though these images of migrants vacating the city are arousing a sympathy and pathos in all of us, it is also arousing a sense of fear to see all of them, like to see their bodies in those images huddled together in the back of the vans, and or on the open grounds waiting for the transport to arrive. And we want to sort of steer clear of this kind of huddling. And so very recently, when I spoke to one of my house helps who like just hustled back to his village at the first possible opportunity, one of the first things he mentioned was that all through the 2 day journey back to his village, they didn't speak to any fellow passengers, and the word that he used was that I'm clean. And in a country like ours, which is like plagued with casteist idea, one is forced to process this narrative of publicness that which assigns certain kind of spaces to certain sections of society, a very discriminative and very divisive kind of assignment of publicness in that sense. So actually, I also started thinking that what are community spaces for lower income groups like now, or what can they be imagined as? What is their sense of publicness in that sense? Do they really belong to these cities, or are they places to work? So in the same industrial narrative, this city is the larger place to work while the home is somewhere else, and the commute is this large commute that is being sort of traversed right now. And will the and is there suspicion that they have towards the city as a place of work? Like, do they feel that the city will provide them or care for them or nurture them like the way their homes will? So these narratives are like starkly different. And also the wedge, like we see that the wedge between the privileged and the like the non-privileged is driving deeper and deeper. So I wonder what is going to be the common ground or the common narrative of um, the public realm where this is going to sort of merge or coincide. This gets me to like one of the final examples that I want to discuss. Um, in our industrial and post-industrial imagination of the built environment, uh, public spaces are increasingly structured in compartments and capsules. So um, I'll cite like traditionally publicness or public gatherings for that factor meant festivities, or gatherings that got community defined by religion or occupation together. So there would be rituals, there would be functions, it would be a it, it there would be a marriage, it would be like a festival like kite flying or Holi or Eid. But in the global world, the publicness or the sense of publicness is to unwind. So note that word. It is another like industrial term, which is about like you unwind after working, like after clockwork you unwind. So like how do we do that? We typically go to a beach, or we go to a promenade, or we catch up with a friend, or eat and dine, like eat and dine, drink together. We indulge in some culture, popular or popular culture or high culture, like whatever that works for us. So also in a complex space like India, these kind of local and global like necessities or sensibilities overlap to various tunes and intensities actually. So we have ghats converging into promenades, kite festivals on rooftops. We have biennales and art festivals in old neighborhoods, traditional murals in modern concrete buildings, and many of them are a part of sensitive urban design inquiries, while many are also questionably successful copy paste from some part of the world. And being a part of the cultural dialogue, all these interventions are meaning making in their own ways, like they are socially, politically, or communally meaning making all the time, and that is actually like a philosophical and semiotic discussion. Just to give you more examples, like some recent examples. So this Monday, the artist Samir Kulavur completed his wall art at a building in Worli, which is an applause, a thank you to all those who have been working on the front line during the pandemic. Another example is the Kerala government has issued a public interest slogan which says like physically distant but socially closer, socially or collectively closer. Then public markets in Myanmar now have been like realigned to allow social distancing in that commercial space. It's also on the, they're making use of the street and they're increasing pedestrianization. Uh, we also know that reverse migration has left behind so many empty shanties, and like those areas are like ghost towns at the moment. Then Maidans and under flyovers are now like temporarily housing migrants who are homeless and have given up on their rented spaces to move back to their home. Gardens, parks, beaches, promenades are all lying vacant at the moment, awaiting for ideas to make them feel safer. Awareness and innovation, these seem to be the key parameters for practitioners of both space and health. So, how do our learnings and experiences get extended post lockdown, post the pandemic? What will the cities of future offer as a narrative of publicness when this moment is a history? More immediately, what do we think is the emerging narrative of publicness? Will it address open spaces in compartments, in pockets, or will it enter our everyday life and routines? What spatial and social forms will they have? So a lot of urban designers, planners, placemakers across the world have started addressing these questions, and also a few directives are being suggested, and actions are being taken in this direction. And on this note, and on this kind of with posing these questions, I would like to conclude today's session. Thank you for your patience. um, Take care.